This is the read aloud of People of Columbia River. I see before I read, so one comprehension strategy is to look at the pictures before you read the section. So I see in this picture, there's waterfalls, there's two men, they're holding nets. I see they've got a big net looking like it's blocking off a section of water, and a bunch of fish are getting caught in it. They must be fishing in that way. I see a picture of two actual men, a real photo, and it looks like they are using those same long nets that are seen in this picture to fish there. Okay. I see women cooking fish. Fish must be really important in this reading. Okay, so I see Chinook jargon. Here's some words from Chinook jargon. So I know that jargon has something to do with talking, and Chinook is a tribe or a group of people. They're part of the Columbia River region of Oregon. And I see lots of words and equal signs. So these words mean the same thing as those. I see a Chinook salmon. I've heard a lot about Chinook salmon. And they are a popular fish that here in Oregon. At least they're one that we know a lot about. Ooh, don't want to show you that. I also see there's a challenge here. Here's a sentence written in Chinook jargon. See if you can write it in English. Ooh. Okay, let's read. Okay. If you have been to the Columbia River, you know it is very large. It is Oregon's biggest river. Today you can see lots of boats on the Columbia. Many of them carry food, minerals, and other cargo for trade. The Indians who lived along the Columbia River also traveled up and down in boats. They carried things to trade, too. The Indian people who lived along the lower Columbia River were much like the people of the coast. They both traveled by canoe on rivers. They both lived in houses made of wooden planks. Much of their food came from the water. Okay, so before I continue, I almost forgot. We need to think about these questions. The questions are, in what ways were the Columbia River Indians like the coast Indians? All right, so that first question I'm thinking about, how are the Columbia River Indians and the coastal Indians alike? And from the paragraph I just read, it said that they both traveled by canoe on rivers and they both lived in houses made of wooden planks. Much of their food came from the water. Okay, so I know how they're similar now. So the other questions I'm going to be looking for are, what was the most important food for the Chinook Indians? How did they catch this food? List the two most important things the Chinook Indians traded. What is the Chinook jargon? And why was it so important? Let's continue reading. Okay. Of the people of the Lower Columbia, let me restart that. The people of the Lower Columbia belonged to many tribes. Some of these tribes were the Wasco, Multnomah, Kuniak, and Clatsop. All of them spoke the Chinook language. Because of this, they are all called the Chinook. So because they shared a language, they are all considered the same group. So, catching salmon. Salmon was the most important food for the Chinook people. Millions of salmon swam up the Columbia River each year. The Chinook men caught them with spears, nets, and long-handled dip nets. They often built platforms out over rapids and waterfalls to fish from. One of the most important fishing places was Celio Falls. It was near where the Dalles is located now. During salmon runs, hundreds of Indians gathered to fish there. The men and boys took turns fishing from wooden platforms. It was hard work. The women and girls worked hard too. They cut up the fish and hung them on racks to dry and smoke. This dried or smoked salmon would be their most important food. It was also used for trading. During the salmon runs, there was much celebrating. The people danced and sang, and they had a big feast. They told old stories and shared the latest news. They gave thanks to the Creator and the salmon for giving them food. So now we know what the most important food was. We know how they caught this. And we know, yeah, okay. The Chinook language. I have a feeling this is going to tell us what Chinook jargon is and why it's important. The Chinook Indians of Lower Columbia the Lower Columbia River were great traders. They traveled long distances in their big canoes to trade. The most important goods were dried salmon and slaves. The slaves were Indians from other tribes who had been captured. The Chinook had big trade fairs where Indians from all around came to trade. A special language was used for trade. We call this language the Chinook jargon. It had words from many languages. Different clans and tribes could use it to speak with each other.